So I have a pretty funny, interesting, crazy headline here on the first tweet. And, you know, I saw it and I thought it was a joke, right? Partly because this guy calls himself Right Honorable, the Right Honorable, right? Okay. The Right Honorable Grant Shapps MP says new business traveler exemption from 4 a.m. on Saturday, the 5th of December. High-value business travelers will no longer need to self-isolate when returning to England from a country not in a travel corridor, allowing more travel to support the economy and jobs. Conditions apply. High-value business travelers don't have to go into quarantine because it's just the plebs and all those ordinary people out there, the filth of the peasants, let them have brioche while they sit in quarantine, right? I mean, that's pretty remarkable, right?
Everyone knows COVID doesn't attack the plutocrats. No, but any headline that comes out of the Britain can be, I would say 99% of it can be interpreted as class war, right? This is a country that's mired in class war. This is another example of class war. You have a permanent underclass fighting a permanent semi-monarchy, and it's amusing after a while. I used to take it seriously, then I realized this is never going to change, and it's just comical.
Well, he's an MP for Welwyn Hatfield and the Secretary of State for Transport. I don't know why he calls himself the Right Honorable, probably because he's in a cabinet position. I also saw that it's something to do with the Privy Council, and the Privy I thought was an outhouse, like an outdoor toilet, so I don't know what Privy Council is. Who knows what they get up to there in the United Kingdom. But, you know, globally we have a situation where, as we've been covering for the past year, 2, 3, 4, especially as the money printer go brrr and the money printing ratchets up, we've been covering the Cantillon effect and the wealth and income gap that's been caused by that. And so this is just making apparent, right? This guy is just saying, okay, any of you wealthy people who got the free money from the government, the central banks, like you're safe from COVID. You don't have to go into the quarantine. But here's another one of these stories along the Cantillon effect, which is just pretty shocking. Sven Heinrich of Northman Trader says, wow, M1 money supply just exploded higher, even further. The biggest monthly jump yet. The Fed is operating without checks or balances. So if you want to look at that chart a little bit closer, you see this is the M1 money supply just shoot up. It's been shooting up since 2008, the financial crisis. And this is the stock market that's going up with each QE bout and round of money printing, thus giving more and more money to a certain class of people that then get to fly in and out and are free to travel, free to be globalized citizens. This is their social credit score. They essentially are above and beyond everybody else, just like Marie Antoinette saying that the peasants should have brioche if they were starving. Like, this is the same sort of situation. I don't know why they can't see that, but they are taunting the fate of, you know, their class of people.
Right. Well, a bit of historical perspective here. So 1694 was the year of creation of the Bank of England. Bank of England was a transitionary institution that would allow for some rights to be given to the plebs, but Bank of England was set up to maintain all the financial control in the hands of the monarchs, the aristocracy and the plutocracy. And so it makes sense now here in the early bits of the 21st century that the Bank of England and the global central banks are printing money over time now to try to preserve the vestiges of this neo-feudal class that's still clinging to power and still thinks that the COVID infection is not going to attack them because they have a title in front of their name, right? So that kind of imbecility and intense British stupidity won't really work in the face of a tsunami of fiat money where all the wealth that's based on fiat money in Britain is about to go into a hyperinflationary collapse against Bitcoin. Sorry that you're poor, but life is life. But
it's in the United Kingdom, it's in Europe, it's in the United States especially. So the three very powerful central banks that get to print money for an elite class of people. You know, the Brits are a former empire, so they're not the center of power like the United States. So they get to call themselves the Right Honorable because they don't have power, right? So they come up with names to make them feel less horrible about themselves. Like, I'm the Right Honorable Stacey Herbert.
Yeah, technically, I'm a lord. I'm a Lord Maxwell of Scotland, but I don't go around calling myself a lord because I don't feel insecure like these people who have to call themselves the Right Honorable, whatever.
The charts tell you all you need to know. Let them, they're all going to be calling themselves the Right Honorable in a post-fiat world. And if that makes them feel better about themselves, let them do it, right? Like let them do it. But the fact is, they're the ones that have created this. This is what Ernest Hemingway said it looks like to go bankrupt slowly and then suddenly. So, I mean, that's what it is. And, you can fight it. You can say you're being optimistic or pessimistic or you shouldn't point that out. And that's negative to point it out. But the facts are the facts. That's the chart, and that's what the data looks like, and that's what the money printing looks like. And it creates a wealth of a class of people that get to fly in and out of countries around the world, not just in England, but in Europe and also in the United States and other countries that are participants in this federal, central banking system. So there is a class of people, some in cultures like to call themselves the Right Honorable. In America, they might like to call themselves private equity or a hedge fund instead.
Yeah. Well, they are amusing. I'll say that.
So I covered the bits about, the class of people that get to fly in and out of around the world with all their free money. All the free money they get gives them a social credit score that enables them to bypass all these laws. We've seen across the United States, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, gets to go out to restaurants and eat, for example, while telling the rest of the plebs, like, don't go out and eat, you plebs. Like, this is going to cause the virus to spread, things like that. So this is something that we see across the world, and we're just pointing out the facts. Here is another story related to that, these consequences that must not be discussed, because there are so many right honorable people that won't allow us to discuss it. Because if you ask any questions about, say, shutting down all small and medium-sized businesses, shutting down all schools, if you ask, like, what happens to the children, especially the poor children, they call you a fascist. If you ask, what about those businesses that are being forced to shut down, that aren't getting any money, any compensation for it? Like in the United Kingdom, they gave pubs £1,000 for forcing them to shut down. That's like throwing brioche at them, right? So you're not allowed to ask questions about, like, what happens when we emerge from this pandemic and we don't have any industry left, or even small and medium-sized enterprises. They say, you're a fascist, don't question us. Well, 2021 will be catastrophic. UN warns of humanitarian crisis as 270 million people may starve. World Food Program Chief David Beasley sounded the alarm at a United Nations General Assembly meeting Friday about the reemergence of the virus pandemic and resulting humanitarian crisis, reported RT News. Beasley said a humanitarian catastrophe is developing with some 270 million people on the pathway towards starvation. Quote, 2021 is literally going to be catastrophic based on what we're seeing at this stage in the game, because we've spent $19 trillion. That money may not and will not most likely be available for 2021. He's pointing out that basically the shutdown in the supply chains in particular, and the lack of attention, essentially, and the shutdown in so many economies and the ability to travel, except for those of the Right Honorable Grant Shapps, right, friends of his, the ability to travel is going to cause starvation for the World Food Programs, countries in Africa, Pakistan, Afghanistan, like programs that help expecting mothers, impoverished people, giving them food. Like, a lot of those are being hit hard from an absence of donations. Also, the food supply system is shut down. So these are the consequences that people aren't talking about.
Right. No, again, kind of an historical view of this. So, for years and years, up until recently, there was always this pigeon-chested kind of braggadocio about how so many millions of people around the world are being lifted out of poverty.
Yes.
Right. We saw this number all the time, like especially in China, and in Asia, millions, tens of millions, 100 million lifted out of poverty. And you'd see this bellowed from the UN or the World Economic Forum or the IMF. Poverty eradicated. Right. And I've often said that this is is unsustainable because it's all based on fiat money. And once the fiat money Ponzi scheme collapses, then poverty will be back with a vengeance. And this is where we're at now. The global fiat money Ponzi scheme has hit the buffers and it's now collapsing like Bernie Madoff collapsed. And now we're going back to poverty. So the answer has always been you need actual sound money like gold, but of course that doesn't work so much as Bitcoin does. And what'll happen is there'll be hundreds of millions and billions of people in the world that'll say to their central bank and their nation state and their government, they'll say, you know, we're not interested in fiat money anymore. We just want to have our own money, have our own peace of mind, and you can go away.
Right, but it's also, you know, as we're describing here, we have this former empire of the British Empire and their Commonwealth, and, you know, they reigned over so much of the globe. And all they have left now are some titles of the Right Honorable, you know, outdoor toilet. You know, so that's what you have there. Here is like we have a system that is, you know, this empire of debt that is falling apart. And that empire, that huge amount of debt that is stolen from the future and time from the future is causing one set of conditions here, but is also causing like things like inflation I talk about in the food prices. The supply chain collapse is caused partly because of, you know, with all that debt and money printing ability, we feel for a while we've had this hubris that we don't need to make anything, we don't need knowledge, we don't need to know how to do anything. Like we could be that idiocracy, like that was like projecting this future. Like this is that, and all we have is left. The equivalent of the Right Honorable outdoor toilet, the Privy Council sort of people in the United States, is those who go on the cable news here and they spout and yell and shout at people who question any of this and call them fascists. Like it's from another world that doesn't relate to the one that most other people inhabit.